Senate will come to order. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, Huffman, Hughes, Johnson, King, Colcourse, La Mantilla, Menendez, Middleton, Miles, Nichols, Parker, Paxton, Perry, Schwertner, Sparks, Springer, West, Whitmire, Saffarini.
Members, a quorum is present. Would those in the gallery and on the floor please rise for the invocation to be delivered by Senator Donna Campbell.
Good day, senators and people in the gallery. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Gracious Heavenly Father, we lay out bills in the Senate and in the legislature. I'm laying out a request to you. You give us the government, but help us remember that it's not about Republican or Democrat principles. It's about your principles, kingdom principles. Heavenly Father, help us remember this, that you give us all an equal opportunity to choose you as our Lord and Savior, and I pray that we do that in Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Senator Campbell. Members, the Dean of the Senate moves to dispense with the reading of yesterday's journal. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, motion is adopted. We got to do what? Oh, reading and referrals. Okay. Members, the following bills and resolutions on first reading in reference to committee. Secretary will read the bills and resolutions.
Senate Bill 2558 by Middleton relating the election terms and resignation of the Board of Commissioners of the Rosario Drainage District Number 4 to local government. Senate Bill 2609 by Hughes relating the creation of the Fannin Farms Municipal Utility District of Fannin County to local government. House Bill 14 to local government. House Bill 54 to Health and Human Services. House Bill 149 to local government. House Bill 260 to local government. House Bill 266 to jurisprudence. House Bill 349 to local government. House Bill 430 to local government. House Bill 465 to Health and Human Services. House Bill 473 to education. House Bill 540 to business and commerce. House Bill 587 to veteran affairs. House Bill 697 to business and commerce. House Bill 785 to jurisprudence. House Bill 879 to local government. House Bill 899 to local government. House Bill 916 to health and human services. House Bill 1038 to finance. House Bill 1248 to local government. House Bill 1287 to Health and Human Services. House Bill 1323 to the Subcommittee on Higher Education. House Bill 1415 to Transportation. House Bill 1472 to Local Government. House Bill 1515 to Natural Resources and Economic Development. House Bill 1526 to Natural Resources and Economic Development. House Bill 1553 to Business and Commerce. House Bill 1760 to State Affairs. House Bill 1898 to Health and Human Services. House Bill 1912 to Education. House Bill 2354 to Local Government. House Bill 2371 to Local Government. House Bill 2384 to State Affairs. House Bill 2489 to Natural Resources and Economic Development. House Bill 2706 to Business and Commerce. House Bill 3805 to Transportation. House Bill 4065 to Health and Human Services. House Bill 4422 to Border Security.
Members, that concludes the morning call. Senator Betancourt, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business, take up and consider committee substitute Senate Bill 1938.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I move to suspend the regular order of business and take up and consider the committee substitute to Senate Bill 1938.
Members, Senator Betancourt moves suspension of the regular order of business. There is objection. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
There being 20 ayes and 11 nays, the bill is passed. The rules are suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage committee substitute Senate Bill 1938. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 1938 relating the failure of a voter registrar to comply with voter registration laws.
Senator Betancourt, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage of the committee substitute of Senate Bill 1938.
Senator Johnson, for what purpose?
Statement on the bill.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I just want to call to your attention that effectively what this bill is going to do is allow the Secretary of State to withhold federal funds, to obstruct the flow of federal funds directly to municipalities, local governments, on account of some rules that we're creating for registrars who are already working under difficult conditions, probably underfunded. So it seems to me that we are essentially bleeding the patient. I think it's a bad idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Members, the motion before us is final passage. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
There being 20 ayes and 11 nays, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Betancourt.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Senator Paxton, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business, take up and consider committee substitute SJR 29.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I move to suspend the regular order of business to take up and consider the committee sub to Senate Joint Resolution 29. This resolution proposes a constitutional amendment to add the fundamental rights of parents that are already recognized in the Texas Education Code to the Bill of Rights in the Texas Constitution. I move to suspend.
Members, Senator Paxton moves suspension of the regular order of business on committee substitute SJR 29. There is objection. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
There being 21 ayes and 10 nays, the rules are suspended. Chair lays that on third reading and final passage. Committee substitute SJR 29. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute SJR 29 proposing a constitutional amendment establishing a parent's right to direct a child's education.
Senator Paxton, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage on the committee sub to Senate Joint Resolution 29.
Members, Senator Paxton moves final passage of committee substitute SJR 29. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
There being 21 ayes and 10 nays, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Paxton.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you so much, members.
Senator Springer, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business, take up and consider committee substitute Senate Bill 1807.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I move to suspend the regular order of business and take up committee substitute Senate Bill 1807.
Members, Senator Springer moves suspension of the regular order of business on committee substitute Senate Bill 1807. There is objection. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Boardwell,
There being
Blanco.
19 ayes and 12 nays, the rules are suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage committee substitute Senate Bill 1807. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 1807 relating to the unlawful altering of election procedures.
Senator Springer, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for final passage of committee substitute to Senate Bill 1807.
Members, Senator Springer moves final passage committee substitute Senate Bill 1807. Secretary will call the Senator Hughes. Okay. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Boardwell, Blanco,
There being
Campbell.
19 ayes and 12 nays, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Springer.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Betancourt, you recognize to suspend the regular order of business committee substitute for Senate Bill 220. This is a third reading bill, members.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the regular order of business and take up and consider the committee substitute to Senate Bill 220.
Any Secretary call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Boardwell,
19
Blanco.
ayes, 12 nays. Rules are suspended. Chair lays out third reading final passage. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 220. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 220 relating to the enforcement of laws relating to elections.
You're recognized on final.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage of the committee substitute of Senate Bill 220.
Secretary will call the roll when ready.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Boardwell, Blanco.
19 ayes, 12 nays. Bill is finally passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Bless you from the podium. You didn't need a microphone for that sneeze. Senator Hughes, you're recognized. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 2275. Suspend the regular order of business.
Thank you, Mr. President. And members, I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business to take up and consider at this time Senate Bill 2275 on third reading. The bill we discussed yesterday has to do with the rulemaking process at the Supreme Court. The Texas Supreme Court has an important constitutional role in developing the rules of civil procedure. And the Constitution says they shall develop those rules not inconsistent with the laws of the state. It's in there twice in the Constitution. This bill would make sure that the statute lines up with the Constitution. They can make rules, but they cannot repeal statutes by making those rules. It's what the bill does, and I move suspension of the regular order of business.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Boardwell, Blanco.
21 ayes, 10 nays. Rule suspended. Chair lays out in third reading and final passage. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 2275. Secretary, read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 2275 relating to the authority of the Supreme Court of Texas to adopt certain rules.
You're recognized on final.
President, final passage.
Secretary will call the roll. When ready, we'll hold.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Creighton.
21 ayes, 10 nays, bills finally passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members.
Senator Creighton, you're recognized to suspend the regular order of business on committee substitute for Senate Bill 17. This is a third reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move suspension.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
19 ayes, 12 nays, rules suspended. Chair now lays out third reading and final passage. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 17. Secretary, read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 17 relating to the power and duties of the governing boards of public institutions of higher education.
Chair recognizes Senator Zaffarani to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President and members, as a descendant of Don Tomas Sanchez, who founded Laredo in 1755, almost 100 years before Texas became our country's 28th state, and as a Texan of Mexican, Spanish, Sephardic Jew, and Greek descent, with an Italian married surname whose blood runs burnt orange, I rise today in strong opposition to Senate Bill 17. Members, this bill, in my opinion, dramatically restricts the abilities of universities to enrich their offerings, their faculty and administration, by prohibiting their ability to promote and to strive for true diversity, equity, and inclusion by closing DEI offices. Texas comprises a rich tapestry of cultures, ethnicities, and identities, making diversity one of our greatest strengths, and our university should reflect our aspirational goal of equal opportunity for all. More specifically, DEI offices on campus create an academic equalizer in society by attracting a diverse academic team to empower through higher education students of all backgrounds. By creating an environment that welcomes and respects faculty and staff reflecting these elements of diversity, our universities and colleges are better equipped to foster academic and intellectual skills such as critical thinking, creativity and innovation, and social and emotional skills such as tolerance, understanding, and cross-cultural sophistication. We are a majority-minority state, and our faculty and other professionals need to reflect our population if we are going to keep the Texas miracle alive. Unfortunately, Senate Bill 17, in effect, would stifle efforts to promote the worthy goals of racial, ethnic, and cultural diversity, equity, and inclusion on campus, and eventually in the workforce and in society. By prohibiting universities from establishing or maintaining offices, divisions, or units that influence hiring practices with respect to race, color, or ethnicity, that conduct trainings, programs, or activities designed or implemented in reference to race, color, ethnicity, or sexual orientation, this bill effectively would eliminate college and universities' ability to recruit faculty who better reflect Texas population and to provide support and resources to underrepresented students. In essence, Senate Bill 17 would prevent universities from taking proactive steps to address demographic disparities by recruiting faculty from specific populations with whom diverse students would identify. What's more, it would ban universities from requiring anyone to undergo trainings related to diversity, equity, and inclusion unless approved in writing by the institution's general counsel and the Attorney General. It is unclear to what extent, if any, these trainings currently are required, but this arbitrary restriction could prevent universities from providing crucial education to faculty and staff about issues such as implicit bias, cultural understanding, and systemic racism when and if necessary. Clearly leaving no stone unturned to prohibit DEI, Senate Bill 17 goes so far as to require extensive compliance reports to the legislature and to the coordinating board before expending any appropriated funds for a fiscal year, mandate compliance audits by the state auditor and withholding of all state appropriations during the next fiscal year to universities that don't comply, and allow a student or employee required to participate in diversity training to sue the institution for injunctive relief. The consequences of passing this bill range from the unknown to the dire. What is unclear to many of us includes how our national academic standings will be impacted, particularly as the very scholars we hope to attract may shun what they perceive to be our unwelcoming environment. How this bill would affect institutions' accreditation and our students' ability to receive financial aid or to participate in national athletic competitions, and how our ability to recruit and retain the best athletes would be impacted. What I believe is definitely clear is that the passage of Senate Bill 17 will be a giant step backward in our quest for equal opportunity and equal worth for all. Because I believe that bias, chauvinism, discrimination, and prejudice are based on ignorance, lack of exposure, and lack of intellectual sophistication, I worry that stifling diversity, equity, and inclusion on our academic campuses simultaneously through their absence will breed the negative attitudes and behaviors typically attributed to ignoramuses while stifling the development of tolerant, enlightened communities. Accordingly, based on what I believe is in the best interest of our great and diverse state and of the diverse groups that comprise it, I will respectfully vote no on Senate Bill 17 and thank everyone who also will vote against it and those who support our efforts. Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Senator Campbell, what purpose?
To speak on final passage.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members. I want to thank Chair Creighton for your work on SB 17 and your work in not only public ed but higher ed also. Members, this bill speaks to DEI in our institutions of higher learning. And for me, in attempting to grasp the inner workings of DEI, I ask, if an individual was attempting to be hired in one of our state-owned institutions, and they were the most qualified applicant because they had each of the educational credentials required, had achieved great success in their field, had years of experience, and would bring remarkable knowledge and reputation to the position, would that individual be rejected for the job because too many people working in this state-owned institution looked like the applicant? They had the same skin color, nationality, gender, sex orientation, and another individual with lesser qualification who has different color, nationality, gender, or sexual orientation, would they be given the job so that DEI benchmarks could be reached? I have to ask, maybe just ponder, does hiring or promoting a candidate based on DEI preferences, does that mean that other candidates are intentionally discriminated against based on that same criteria? I mean, isn't that illegal? Would hiring or promoting based on DEI preferences create a tremendous division inside our educational system? Are individuals told that they are not hired or promoted because they're just not the right color or gender? Is this expected to happen secretively because of preferences that are established in DEI initiatives? We recently heard in committee testimony from 2 faculty hired by UT specifically for outreach and expansion of DEI initiatives. But I'm not sure how their success is actually measured in their position. I wonder, just wonder, is it correct to say that DEI program creates a quota system? I don't know. If a DEI quota system were allowed to be put in place inside of our institutions, how far would the quotas go? Who would be involved? Who would manage the quotas? Would each people group, each race, each subgroup, each native tribe in Texas be included in the quota group? It begs the question, when any institution utilizes DEI preferences in hiring or admittance to a university or promotions or even continued employment based on the physical attributes rather than on merit, envy and disdain are sure to occur, causing what? Infighting, unnecessary distractions, and ultimately division in that organization. Now, would that be any way we are to run Texas institutions of higher education? This bill aims to stop policies that promote division in our state institutions of learning. It seems as though DEI is at odds with the clear civil rights legislation that demands equality regardless of race. The intent of this bill is to restore equal opportunity for people in our state educational institutions. As a member of Public Ed Committee, I have found that DEI is an ideology that is permeating state education policies that could be doing harm to students as well as employees by limiting opportunities available to them and yet at the same time expanding opportunities based on aspects of human differences, trading out meritocracy for mediocrity. The intent of this bill is to recreate equal opportunity for all people involved in our public ed and higher ed institutions, regardless of race or human differences. I can only imagine the confusion if this is used in hiring process for faculty and other employees. For example, what if two competing applicants are of the same diversity, two applicants, meaning race, ethnicity, creed, color, sex, gender identity, socioeconomic status, language, culture, national origin, religion, spirituality, age, disability, political perspective, all listed according to Google. How is the applicant, how are they chosen? How is the applicant, if they're just alike, how is the applicant selected? Does the person that's doing the hiring just keep on going until they find a difference that they prefer? Is there a prioritization of diversity? Is there a prioritization of just specific diversity characteristics? Are diversity characteristics weighted, some more important than the other? It seems reasonable to me to reject selection practices that can be so subjective and replace them with a formula that is not riddled with variables of subjectivity. We should change the D of diversity to defined, the E of equality to equal opportunity, and the I of inclusion to be important for all. Defined equal opportunity is important for all. We need to restore selection practices that are measurable and can bring in the desired skill set that is needed for job solutions. This bill seeks to get rid of policies that benefit some and burden others. This bill seeks to restore hiring practices through merit. Members, in this hallowed chamber, we have heard speak of Dr. Martin Luther King and his great contribution to our country. And it's a contribution that keeps on contributing. He has been quoted in this chamber from his I Have a Dream speech, where he said, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. If Texas is prepared to hire on the basis of skin color, if Texas is prepared to grant promotions on the basis of gender, if Texas is prepared to give positions of authority on the basis of sexual orientation, I ask you, does that not do violence to Martin Luther King? Thank you. I am voting for this bill proudly. Thank you.
Senator Menendez, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, members, diversity, equity, and inclusion is a critical policy for this state and its continued development and growth. It has taken years and millions of dollars to build diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, and that was only after many long, hard pushes to acknowledge the need for DEI in our institutions of higher education for both our faculty and our students. You know, and we just heard from my colleague, who I respect very much, but if the quotas were there, they are doing a terrible job because there is not enough diversity. And diversity, equity, and inclusion is imperative to the health of this state because it fosters opportunity, creativity, fresh perspectives, and understanding. It makes it to where people of all walks of life, different races, abilities, ages, socioeconomic statuses, religion, and diverse backgrounds can be made comfortable in the workplace and in their educational setting. As a significant tool for social mobility, this is especially imperative in higher education, as many students fail to see a representative makeup of peers and faculty in the classroom. Some students may find it harder to participate, attend, or contribute to the class where there lacks diversity in their school. The fact of the matter is that DEI is deeply entrenched in the foundations of our institutions since we started making advancements towards equality in the 60s. And any encroachment on that effort, whether it be to limit hiring and recruitment practices, the teaching of research or certain subjects, or any other piece, has far-reaching consequences on the health of our institutions as a whole. Even if you can't support the momentum and the history behind the need for DEI, you should think about this. This is not a conservative policy move. Banning DEI is not only going to impact hiring and recruitment, it may mean a loss to access to more than $450 million annual in STEM research grants offered by the National Science Foundation. Many of those research grants, we heard testimony, require DEI policies to qualify. Banning DEI means not only less healthy and diverse institutions of higher education, but also less competitive ones. If we're not able to access research grants or to have the academic freedom to research issues, we cannot lead this nation in research. This bill is slated to make hiring and recruitment in these institutions, quote, more fair, citing student and professor discomfort. However, I have a petition of over 500 professors of color who stand against not just tenure ban, but citing the protections and the fairness you seek in this bill. Fair chances at merit-based hiring decisions. That is where the discussion belongs. I agree, we can ban these loyalty oaths. There also is something to say about the peoples who stayed behind that night on that long, late night in committee. So many students, graduates, and young professionals, some of them shared their experience of the struggle it took for them because of their background, because of the fact that no one in their family had been in college, the access to higher education, the access to the resources. Others shared the deleterious impacts this would have on their own research, and still others the chilling nature of this legislation. I am committed to having a real discussion about how we can improve our strategy to better include all voices in this discussion and make DEI more effective. I, however, believe this is not the right bill for that. I believe this bill simply attempts to turn back the clock in the face of all those who dedicated their life to equity and worked through less safe and less inclusive environments to get to where we are today. This bill is telling those people, like Rosalind Franklin, who was not included in the Nobel Prize awarded to Watson and Crick for discovering the shape of the DNA double helix, thanks to her X-ray picture of DNA, that it was simply merit that contributed to her exclusion from history. This bill is telling Gladys West, who created the foundations of GPS in the 1930s, where she explicitly stated that she felt education was her only escape from her small rural community in Virginia, that she had the same chances as a white upper-class man from the suburbs at getting that education. Members, it's not just a kid, from San Antonio whose parents are immigrants, who had a fourth grade education, my mom was a nurse. It's so many. Without our education, without our access to higher education, we wouldn't be here. So this is why I plead with you, let's make this an interim conversation. Before we make this law, let's have a conversation without the threat of universities funding beyond the line, because we know that will limit our institutions and their professors' ability to advocate for a policy that is working for them. I ask that we consider the process that we followed for the bill. So many who stayed long enough to have their conversations heard, no matter how late it was. Members, we can ban these loyalty oaths and we can express freedom of speech without passing this damaging bill. And so this is why I stand today and respectfully say that I will be voting against committee substitute to Senate Bill 17, because I believe it is too blunt a solution for a specific problem. Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. To speak on the bill, very briefly, Senator Creighton has acknowledged, I think everybody in the chamber has acknowledged, that diversity is a shared goal, specifically diversity in academic hiring. Yet after a couple of years of analyzing the problem, what we've concluded is that the best way that we can advance the common shared goal of diversity in higher education is to eliminate the only thing we've ever done to try to advance the cause of diversity in higher education. It strikes me as not just ironic or disappointing, but somewhat lazy and remarkably unimaginative. And if we're going to approach sincerely that shared goal, diversity, and we know the reason it's a shared goal, among the noble qualities of having that shared goal, we know it works better. It works better to have diversities of experience and perspectives in everything. Corporate boards, academic institutions, senates, everywhere. If we're going to take that shared goal seriously, I think we should, before we remove the one thing that's working, or maybe it's only working a little bit. I know, Senator Creighton, you're not impressed with the numbers, and I think we all acknowledge that we could do better. But that's where we've put our efforts so far. Before we pull that back, we ought to have a backup plan. And the idea that we could look to Texas Women's University, whether or not it has a DEI program, and say, maybe there's solutions there. It's called Texas Women's University, folks. It's going to be different than other institutions. I don't think I can look to Israel and draw lessons. And I bring those examples up not to suggest that anybody's being flippant, but I just don't think we've taken sufficiently seriously this question of how we're going to do better than we're already doing. And I think we have an obligation to take that question more seriously than we have been before we take a bunch of steps backwards and retract what we've already done. I agree with my colleagues, Senator West in particular, talked about doing things over time, about having metrics. There have been lots of discussion about ways we might reform, advance, improve DEI efforts. And then there's another question of just patience. Things do take time. We are fighting against the currents of history. And the solution we seem to have is we're not moving fast enough, so stop rowing. And I'm afraid those currents aren't going to stop, and they will take us backwards if we don't keep rowing. We can improve the stroke, but I think we got to keep rowing. So I recognize that a great deal of effort has been put into this, that it's sincere and that the hopes are genuine, but I don't think we've done our job, and I don't think that we can say that we've done something by choosing to do nothing. And that's what we're doing with this bill. Thank you.
Senator Blanco, what purpose? Speak on the bill. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, today I rise to speak against Senate Bill 17 and its aim to ban diversity, equity, and inclusion offices and practices in higher education. Members, we have heard time and again that diversity is our strength. And that strength should be uniting us. It should not be dividing us. The fact is, institutions of higher education have a long documented history of discrimination against people of color and of women. And we've heard the discussion about, yes, things have improved a bit, but our institutions are still failing. They're failing to ensure opportunities within higher education are open to everyone. And that progress has been painfully slow. Painfully slow. And we've got to push for progress. We got to push against the tide of history. We've got to push against the implicit biases that still exist. Members, we've heard a lot today of the term colorblind. And doing away with DEI, the practices and the policies that we've discussed, and simply relying on colorblind or sex-blind processes, it leaves minorities behind. This is not an opinion. This is not an anecdote. This is documented. In the University of Texas at Austin's Hispanic Equity Report, it states, and I quote, "We at UT Austin demonstrate that seemingly neutral policies, rules and practices, and systems of management have produced disparate impacts on Hispanic faculty." Well, members, those disparate impacts, they're documented in the lack of faculty representation, where only 7% of faculty are Latinos, and only 5.1% of faculty are Black. Despite Latinos and African Americans making up 41% and 13% of Texas population, respectively. And then there's inequities in compensation, where you see Latinos and Latina professors are paid on the average $25,000 less than their white peers in similar positions. And then the lack of representation in all of our universities. When you look at university leadership across the board, where only 10 Latinos hold leadership roles, but not one of those was a Latina since 2019. Conversely, Latinos and African Americans have the lowest rate of promotion. When you look at UT, more than 1,700 tenure and tenure track faculty. There are more than 1,700 tenure and tenure faculty, but only 7% of those were Latino. And for African Americans, there's only 8%. And Latinos also lagged in the promotion of tenure by 22% compared to their white professors, while Black professors lagged by 9%. Members, that report also documents and states, and I quote, "The holistic process which ostensibly aims to increase diversity actually serves to enroll fewer Hispanics and fewer Black students while admitting more white students." Very few people know this. It's disturbing, it's problematic, and it's unacceptable. Now, our colleague Senator Creighton mentioned UTEP, and he had mentioned that there's a lot of progress, and there is. It's my home university in El Paso. But I got to tell you, it's not immune to these disparate impacts on Hispanic faculty. When you look at my university that I graduated from, despite being located in a predominantly Hispanic region, despite 40% of UTEP's faculty being Latino, only 27% of the faculty that are Latino are tenured. These disparities for minority faculty exist throughout our state. And this bill, I'm afraid, will send a message that the status quo is okay. It's not okay. We have to do more. We need higher education to do better. They are not doing better. They are failing. So members, I treasure the diversity of this body. I love the fact that we can go to the members' lounge and talk about all kinds of things and do a lot of great work together. I think the diversity in this chamber is what makes us stronger. But not embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion in higher education will not only hurt minority faculty, but in my opinion, it's going to hurt minority students. It's going to hurt all students. And I think ultimately, it's going to hurt our entire state. So members, I respectfully will be voting no on Senate Bill 17. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Blanco. Senator Hinojosa, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll speak on the bill. I was not planning to speak this evening, but I must tell you that as I heard the great debate by Senator Creighton and those that were asking questions, I had to speak up because in many ways, I do think that this bill is going backwards in time, Senator Creighton. I will tell you that, yes, we made a lot of improvements, but if I recall, we didn't have DEI when I graduated from college after I came back from Vietnam. So in 1970 at a Pan American College. And I had about 3.7 plus GPA. Yet I was rejected by UT Law School. I was rejected by University of Houston. But I was accepted at George Washington, D.C., at Georgetown, D.C., and other law schools, national law schools. They were the same caliber as UT. My point is, I do hope, as was quoted from Martin Luther King, Senator Campbell, that at some point in our life, we will be able to see and look at the point in our country's history where men and women will be judged by their character and not by the color of their skin or by the name, by their last name. And that's important because I know we're all created equal, but unfortunately some are more equal than others. If DEI had been in place back when I first applied to law school here in Texas, I think I probably would have been accepted. But at that time, the policy was different. There was a handful of Hispanics at UT Law School at that time. There were more Hispanics at Georgetown Law School in Washington, D.C. than at UT Austin. Can you imagine that? So this is why I feel that this really is a step backwards. I know that there are some abuses in higher education system. Yes, some of the requirements that are made in DEI are really somewhat crazy. They're adopted from universities from California, the West Coast, and other parts of the United States. But we can fix this problem by being more focused and targeting those parts of DEI where they are really being misused and just focus and targeting those, but making progress forward. So at this point, I would respectfully vote no. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Betancourt, what purpose?
Speak on final passage.
You're recognized.
I too listened to the debate tonight. And importantly, because for the first time in a long time, when we heard testimony, I think starting in the Finance Committee, that Senator Creighton referred to tonight, I was shocked. I was shocked when at Tech, one of our great institutions, they were not going to treat students equally. directly from your opening. I was shocked that the biology department was hiring someone, not based on what they can do for ATP and ADP and everything else that you want biologists to do, but a test, a loyalty oath. And a loyalty oath to what? To an acronym called DEI. So I thought about, what do I stand for? What do I think is important? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Because these are words that speak out through the centuries. They're words that shook the world in 1776. But it continued because 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty, dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we engage in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. So what are we discussing tonight? Can a nation long endure that has a loyalty oath to the DEI? Or can a nation long endure that has an oath to the Constitution, a respect for the Bill of Rights, knowledge of the Texas Constitution? That's what Senator Creighton's bill is about. It's about what we believe in, that all men are created equal. And it's shocking to see that we've had to pass a bill to remind ourselves that all men are created equal, because that's what the committee substitute to Senate Bill 17 is about, members. It's about the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights. It's about what we are as a people, that we believe that we can all be equal, and that we believe that that's where our oath lies, and not in an oath to something called DEI, and an oath to the U.S. Constitution, and an oath to the Texas Constitution, and an oath that we believe all men are created equal.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Miles, speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President, members. I was not planning on speaking on the close of this bill. But after sitting here, Mr. President, members, listening to some of the closings, I felt obligated to stand up and correct some of the wrong. Senator Betancourt, when the Declaration of Independence was written, African Americans were considered property, not men, just for the record. You know, tonight, many members quoted MLK, I Have a Dream speech, Mr. President, as if that was the only speech that Dr. King ever wrote. He wrote hundreds of speeches. To name a few, 3 Evils of Society, The Other America, and Why America May Go to Hell, were just a few of his speeches. But he also wrote one from the Birmingham jail. And I'm quoting him as I say, often the oppressor goes along unaware of the evils involved in his oppression. so long as the oppressed accepts it. Members, I will not accept it. There is no logic in the belief that you can increase diversity by removing policies and offices that work to promote diversity. And that is why I will not be supporting SB 17. There is no way that you can remove policies that have helped move the needle and accept or expect for you to increase diversity. I asked some of my colleagues, including the author of this bill this evening, all I ask is when you write policy, think about how it may affect those who the policy was written for. Get their input first. Let's be on the front side instead of the back side. And as you quote some of our great leaders of this country, please make sure you're quoting them properly. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Senator Miles. Senator West, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and members. Standing behind me, the member of the Confederate. Standing in front of me are my colleagues. I know each and every one of you, some better than the others. I appreciate your perspectives on the various issues that we have to deal with. Too many times we find ourselves at this juncture talking about differences, race being the most predominant issue that we debate. I think it's disingenuous. I think by removing DEI departments that we're going to solve the issue, Senator Creighton, of diversity and inclusion. And I know in your heart you really believe that. But without a commitment from Lieutenant Governor Patrick, the governor of the state of Texas, to allow a group of people, reasonable persons, to come together in order to do that, put in place a mechanism in order to have it done, I'll join my colleague Boris Miles. Yes, Senator Cabell has quoted Martin Luther King, and many of us kind of favor going to Martin Luther King in these times. Martin is perceived, Senator Betancourt, as a moderate African American. Let me make sure you hear these words. Many of the ugly pages of American history, and I'll say Texas history, have been obscured and forgotten. Recall when we had debates on this floor, and I had to quote to you what happened in 1861, when there was a succession from the Union by Texas. Statements made then that the reason that Texas wanted to succeed is because the black man was inferior. Those are some of the ugly words from in this very chamber depicted the plight of African Americans. A society is always eager to cover up its misdeeds with a cloak of forgetfulness. Let's not forget that. But no society can fully repress an ugly past when the ravages persist into the present. And the ravages, my friends, still persist today. You know it as well as I. America owes a debt of justice, which has begun to pay. Let me say that again. America, Texas, owes a debt of justice, which it has only begun to pay. And use of a DEI program is part of that debt. or the mechanism in order to pay that debt. Yes, it has some imperfections, but you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Now, yes, I know each of you have your own politics. I have my politics too, and I understand and appreciate that. If it loses the will, if Texas loses the will to finish or slackens in its determination, history will recall its crimes, and the country or the state that would be great will lack the most indispensable element of greatness. My friends, that's justice. Not just us, but justice. If indeed this is a big issue, and it will be, because I know it's going to be on the front page of every paper in Texas, it'll be on the news tonight. There'll be talk about it on the political campaign. Look what we did, we'll beat ourselves on the chest. But if we're doing this in order to increase diversity, why not bring us into the tent in order to get it done? Up front, not behind, but up front. That wasn't done. All of your colleagues that are ethnic minorities in this chamber are saying the same thing to you. It's wrong, but you're not listening. It's wrong, but you're not listening. It's wrong, but you're not listening. You say you want to make change, but you won't allow us to participate in ideas that will effectuate the change. There'll be some of the younger senators in here that just got here that will be here probably 20 years from now. And the question that I ask you, will the debt have been paid? Where we can truly judge a person by the content of their character, not by any other category. My female counterparts, you always say we want to see more women in places of power. I agree with you, we do. We want to see more African Americans in places of power, Latinos, you name it. Asians. We want to see that. And we can do that if, in fact, we want a model in the state of Texas that can be replicated across the country. We have the ability to do it if we work together. I'm not going to prolong this. The fact of the matter is, I've been here before, almost making the same speech. I would just hope that you would listen.
Thank you, Senator West. Senator Creighton? A motion on final passage. Do you wish to speak? You may or may not. You can just make a motion to pass the bills. Your call.
I did wish to speak.
You're recognized.
Members, we've had a lot of discussion today on this subject, but we have data and specific facts that show that the policies we have in place today, if it is all of our goal for true diversity and true equal opportunity for all, equal dignity for all, that the rubric, the policies, the strategies, the structure that we have in place with DEI today is not working. We have a study from the University of Baylor that's been revered all over the country that shows from 2018 to 20 that DEI does not equal any significant results for university hiring of minority applicants. We have a study from the National Bureau of Economic Research that shows that chief diversity officers and DEI frameworks do not result in diverse hiring. We have a study from Harvard University, backed up with every metric questioned and tested by the University of Tel Aviv, that shows that there are no results in the business and corporate world related to mandatory diversity training. We have results from 2022, university results that show that 76% of applicants for faculty positions at particular universities were not ever even considered for their academic record or merit due to diversity screening and loyalty oath requirements. Diversity statements are not designed to ensure that potential faculty members follow civil rights laws. Instead, they're designed to sort job candidates by ideology. They reshape the culture on campus to ensure that faculty members conduct themselves in a manner that advances a certain political agenda. And requiring diversity statements as part of the employment process acts as a gatekeeper for prospective faculty and staff, and it dissuades those with dissenting viewpoints from applying. By eliminating personal autonomy, this amounts to nothing short of viewpoint discrimination and compelled speech. If you could hang a sign above this bill, the sign would say, "Dissenting viewpoints need not apply." Is that the Texas University campus we all strive for, where some are excluded under the guise of very important nomenclature, diversity, inclusion, very important words? DEI has become a political agenda, not a program to follow civil rights law. In eliminating personal autonomy, whether you call it viewpoint discrimination or compelled speech, it is not free speech. And without free speech, without equal opportunity for all, without equal dignity for all, diversity, equity, and inclusion falls. And if it falls, what are we supporting? If the facts show that the results have not brought more diversity in faculty hiring, what are we fighting for? Mediocrity? Is that what people send us here for? To fight for mediocrity? I've taken criticism for carrying a bill under this subject matter because, of course, it's odd at first glance when you read a caption to remove a unit or an office from a university under the name diversity, equity, and inclusion. But we have to strive for better than what we are getting. I hope we build something better. I hope that something proves to be more inclusive for all viewpoints. I hope that something includes true diversity. I hope that our goal together, shared together in alignment, is equal opportunity, not equity arguments that are designed to be equal outcome that excludes some or many or sometimes all that don't share in that mindset or that strategy. Loyalty oaths, political litmus tests, mandatory training related to gender and pronoun usage. Is it really okay with us to keep DEI units when just down the street at Del Seaton, you are instructed, if you work there, to capitalize all references to the word black. You are instructed through published literature and guidance that if you refer to anyone that is white, you use a lowercase. Is that okay? Is it okay that Asian Americans were excluded from A&M's diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies and goals? It's not to me. It's not to any of you. What we do know is that hundreds of people are working to implement DEI programs on Texas campuses, costing millions and millions of dollars, that are implementing these controversial strategies, and it's exclusionary. If some think it can be saved, that's interesting, because to many of us, that's not worth saving under the guise of true inclusivity and equal dignity for all. Minority college admissions across our state have failed to reach goals. And again, the Baylor study showed that in 2018 to 2020, having a DEI office was not only ineffective increasing the number of minority hires within the faculty, but they declined. In hiring new faculty, a growing number of mandatory diversity statements has resulted in compelled speech and chilled free speech. Those are not just one-offs. We did not cover all of the examples I have today because only if asked, I went through a specific Texas University example. You know why? Because there are many, many examples across this state and across this country, examples taking us in the wrong direction. If Texas is going to continue to lead the nation and the world, we can't let that continue, especially in science and research. This is particularly critical. We must recruit the best people in every field, regardless of race or gender. As we all keep diversity and inclusion as a top priority, we must hire based on merit the best and the brightest, the most competent. We cannot afford to screen out anyone who might have the key to curing cancer or Alzheimer's. We need the best minds, and we need to recognize that all of those minds won't think alike. They won't clear the hurdles of a narrow loyalty oath tied to a DEI unit. In fact, that's the point of creativity, of innovation, of progress. That's the kind of diversity we also must consider. So what I appreciate so much about this debate, as difficult as some of the conversation has been, certainly in the committee process as well, over the past several days and here today, is that it has been an honest conversation. We've talked about race, we've talked about civil rights, about what has been done, what is not working, what we have done that is right, and what we have left to accomplish. And isn't that a positive? I'm proud we've had this conversation. I want to make sure we continue to have it. One of the things we all agree on is that there is more work to be done. But we know when it comes to civil rights, to equality, to freedom of speech, and the issues that are on the table today, we solve problems by ensuring that the barriers of the past have been removed and that we all work together. We just may have a different viewpoint on how to make that progress. Not all of it has to be offensive. It may just be a different viewpoint on how to achieve a very, very similar outcome. But we have to make sure that we aren't creating new barriers to equality, inclusion, and certainly for freedom of speech for everyone. which we have well documented examples where that has been specifically infringed time after time under these rubrics. Members, if affirmative action falls at the Supreme Court level, I'm carrying the bill to allow the University of Texas to make decisions based on admissions outside of the top 10 percentile. I obviously have the right intentions, and many of us have other bills that are outside the scope of this legislation, but also carry out our goals that we have all shared together today on this floor. Senate Bill 17 will ensure that every job applicant at a Texas college or university is hired based on merit. This legislation will ensure that employees at Texas academic institutions are free to speak their minds. They will not be required to attend mandatory trainings that they don't believe are effective, but that they are certainly welcome to advance their own cause to achieve very similar goals based on a different strategy. This debate is not only about the University of Texas or A&M or other universities across the state. We have the best universities in the world in Texas and the best people working at them. But we have to have tough conversations. We have to share in the oversight of how the dollars are used. And if we are all sharing in the goal of striving for more diverse outcomes, we have to scrutinize whether or not things are working. And if the majority party is pursuing those goals, there doesn't have to be some sinister ulterior motive. It can just be that we all seek more diverse outcomes together. This debate has extended across this nation. Texas is leading on this issue, as we should. Earlier this month, debates at MIT, they were deciding what to do about DEI, the lack of progress, and even in that deep blue state, advocates on all sides admitted that DEI was not effective and had, quote, gone off the rails. More and more states and campuses are recognizing that these programs need another look and that they are carrying out results that are divisive, fostering turmoil and distrust, and hampering freedom of speech, destroying open inquiry and expression. And those are the bedrock of our universities, those principles. DEI is costing taxpayers millions of dollars in many examples, but that's not the most important point. We have to advance diversity and protect free speech. That is what Texans deserve. All Texans. All Texans. I appreciate those that supported Senate Bill 17, and I appreciate those that offered dissenting viewpoints during this discussion today. I'm committed to continuing to work with you to achieve these goals. Mr. President, I move final passage of committee substitute for Senate Bill 17.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, Huffman, Hughes, Johnson, King, Colcourse, Lamantia, Menendez, Middleton, Miles, Nichols, Parker, Paxton, Perry, Schwertner, Sparks, Springer, West, Whitmire, and Zaffarini.
There are 19 ayes and 12 nays. The bill is finally passed. Senator West?
Mr. President, I'd ask that the entire debate on Senate Bill 17 be reduced to writing and placed in the journal.
When you say the entire debate, you mean the 5 hours?
Everything. I want to make, yes, sir. And I have, I really believe, and I know that's a lot, and I have already checked with the secretary on this prior to asking for it, recognizing how much work's involved. But this needs to be recorded for historical purposes. I want to make certain that future legislatures have the benefit of what occurred here tonight.
Senator West, are you including yesterday? We're on today day. Are you talking about today's debate and yesterday's debate?
Yes.
Even on suspension? Yesterday?
Yes.
Okay. Members, the motion is to reduce 100% of the words spoken. Senator Hancock, you're recognized. For what purpose?
Actually, a parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Curious whether the video, audio of the debate not be allowable under those circumstances. In other words, if there were a court case, if there were a challenge, would not the video and audio be sufficient rather than having to have everything in writing?
Is that a parliamentary inquiry?
Yeah, it's really not a parliamentary inquiry. It's a question.
It's a question that I would, and then if you don't mind, let me pose the question to Senator West.
Do you yield?
Senator West, before we take the vote, the question is, would that not be sufficient within a court case? Not being an attorney, I don't know. We have other attorneys on here. But before we take the vote and ask those that have been here all day long and serve us so well, to spend this time in writing, my question is, you say the purpose is for
historical purposes.
Legal.
No, I did not say
or historical.
It's for historical purposes.
But do we not plan on archiving these video and audio of today? I know that I can go back sessions after sessions and pull up such video and archived information.
Well, and I'd all due respect, if you want to vote it down, you have the votes to vote it down. What I've asked is something that we normally do. Let me finish, please. What I've asked is what we normally, customarily do. I know it's a lot of data. So before I even broached this, I talked with the Secretary of the Senate, and she's advised me that it can, in fact, be done. I would not have done this if I hadn't approached the Secretary of the Senate first.
I've rarely known the Secretary of the Senate to say no to anything, and I still have an open question on whether this would not be historical information being archived as video.
I guess it could be, right.
Senator West, could you come forward a second? Do you mind? Senator West?
Yes, Mr. President, and I'd ask that we wait until after session to have this done.
Okay. And Senator West, we are pleased to do it. We know it's an historical record. It was just an unusual request since the day had closed yesterday, but it is an historical record. We respect that. So thank you for allowing them to do it after after they get a little rest and
After they get
are
a
able
little
to
rest,
do it.
exactly.
And they don't have this every day to do. Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted. The chair announces the signing of the following in the presence of the Senate.
House Concurrent Resolution 96 and House Concurrent Resolution 98.
Following motion in writing, Secretary, read the motion.
Motion in writing. Mr. President, I move to suspend Senate Rule 11.13 to permit committees to meet during consideration of the local and uncontested calendar. Motion by Hall.
Any objection? Hearing none. Motion adopted. The President's desk is clear. Are there any announcements? Senator Betancourt.
Mr. President, members, I move to suspend the 24-hour posting rule in accordance with Senate Rules 1110, 1118, so the Senate Committee on Local Government can take up pending business tomorrow, Tuesday, April 20th, at 9:45 a.m. in the Betty King Room, 2E20. We're planning on voting on bills, so I hope everyone can be prompt. Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion adopted. Senator Hughes, do you have a motion? Oh, you're getting the motion now. Senator Hughes, you're recognized for motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move to suspend the posting rules to allow the Committee on State Affairs to add Senator Parker's Senate Bill 2142 to the posting for tomorrow's hearing, 9 a.m. here in the chamber or upon conclusion of the local calendar. Senate Bill 2142.
Any objection? Hearing none. Motion adopted. Members, can I remind you that tomorrow is Returning Members Day? And in the past, a few times when they've walked in, members, can I have your attention? Members, can I have your attention? Paul, can I have your attention? I just want to remind everyone, tomorrow is the Returning Members Day. And we've had situations when I was a senator and as lieutenant governor when there weren't many senators on the floor when they walked by. So we start at 11. I think just out of respect to our members returning, we should be on the floor tomorrow when they come, if at all possible, tomorrow. That's all. Thank you. And on time, 11 o'clock, and we'll get rolling. 11 o'clock. Yeah, there's a 10 o'clock reception in the back and 11 o'clock here. Sorry. Senator Betancourt, did you have your light on? You're fine. Senator Colcourse? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Health and Human Services Committee will reconvene 15 minutes upon adjournment in the Betty King Room. That is today in the Betty King Room. We had previously met on the Senate floor out of respect to the staff that would have to set up the tables. We are moving to the Betty King Room for all those that wish to testify.
Any objection? Hearing none. Senator Creighton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, it's time to return to the Senate Committee on Education. We will reconvene today, April 19th, in E1028 to continue our committee agenda, and we will begin with voting on pending business. See you soon, members.
Thank you, members. What time, Senator Creighton? Immediately upon adjourn. Recess. Upon recess. The chair recognizes the Dean of the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate recess until 9 a.m. Thursday, April 20th, for the consideration of a local and uncontested calendar. Upon conclusion of the local and uncontested calendar, I move that the Senate recess until 11 a.m. Thursday, April 20th.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the Senate stands in recess until 9 a.m. Thursday, April 20th, for consideration of local calendar. Upon the conclusion of the local calendar, the Senate stands in recess until 11 a.m. Thursday, April 20th. Thank you, members.